Can I get you a drink there, Father?
Oh, yes, just a wee nip there. Oh, there it is. Oh, thank you. Well, you know, oh, what was that?
Was pretty good.
I don't think so. You know, do you ever notice how we Irish talk so different? We answer the question first, and then we ask it. Well, we say things like, you won't have a drink, will you? Or, you're not going out, are you? We do. You've heard it all. Well, but there's a little bit of Irish in all of us, and that's why we live forever. Well, you know, when Irish eyes are smiling, they steal your heart away. Well, that reminds me of these two fellas in a pub in Belfast. And one says to the other, what's new? And he says, well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. And he says, well, what's the bad news? And he says, the English have landed on the moon. And he says, well, then what's the good news? And he said, all of them. They're all gone. That's a good one. That's a good one. Mary's explaining that one to her friend. Well, you know, my good friend Casey was in a pub, you know, and in walked these three men. And they sat down at a table. We had the CEO of Coors, the CEO of Budweiser, and the CEO of Guinness. And the CEO of Coors says, I'll have a Coors. And the CEO of Budweiser says, I'll have a Budweiser. And the CEO of Guinness says, well, I'll have a Coke. And they both looked at them. And he said, well, since neither of you fellas were having beer, I thought I'd play along. Well, you see, Casey found himself one day in London, one night, late at night, at 12:30 it was, down in the underground there, the subway, you know, and he was walking along looking for the escalator, and he found the escalator, and above it is a sign that says, dogs must be carried on the escalator. And he thought to himself, oh my gosh, where am I going to find a dog at this late hour?
I got one on Father's friend Casey. He's sitting down to supper one night, and he's waiting for his meal, and his wife comes up behind him and bang, hits him right on the back of the head with a frying pan. And he says, what was that for? He says, I was going through your britches, and I found a piece of paper that said Mary Ann on it. He says, well, I told you I was going to the races. That was the name of my horse. He says, oh, I'm sorry. A couple of nights later, he's sitting at supper again. Bam! She hits him on the back of the head again with a frying pan. And he says, what was that for? She says, your horse just called.
I just love children's stories. Children and horses, they go together so well. Well, you see, this Catholic boy was talking to a little Jewish boy, and he says, our parish priest knows much, much more than your rabbi. And the Jewish kid says, well, of course he does. That's because you tell him everything.
Okay, there's these three friends trying to sneak into the Olympics. There's an Englishman, a Scotsman, and an Irishman. The Englishman's named Bentley, the Scotsman's named McGregor, and the Irishman's named Murphy. Well, the Englishman, he's looking around and he sees a big old pole, picks it up, puts it under his arm, walks up to the ticket taker and says, Bentley, England, pole vault. And let him in. Well, the Scottish fella, he's looking around, sees a little manhole cover, goes over and gets that, puts it under his arm, walks up to the ticket taker and says, McGregor, Scotland, discus. And he got in. Well, Murphy, he's wondering what he's going to do. And he sees some barbed wire up there in the corner of the lot. He goes over and gets him a little gob, puts it under his arm, and he walks up to the ticket taker, and he says, Murphy, Ireland, fencing!
Rory. When you're in Scotland, how do you tell a member of the MacDonald clan?
Oh, you pick up their kilt and look for the quarter pounder!
Well, you know, the first time I met Lafferty was in the bar. He was over there having a pint. Well, I walked up and I stood beside him and I said, he said to me, do you take a drink? And I said, I do. And he said, well, don't take that one.
Okay, we got one more for Father's friend Casey. He's driving a cab in London, and he happens to pick up a nun. As he's driving along, he says, sister, you know, I've always wanted to be like to kiss a nun. She says, well, that's unusual. In order to think about that, you'd have to be a Catholic and you'd have to be single. He says, it turns out I am Catholic and I am single. So she says, oh, and she pulls around, gives him a big old kiss. And boy, it was a good one. So Casey, he's driving along, starts to chuckle. And she says, well, what are you chuckling about? He says, well, it turns out I'm not Catholic and I'm not single. He says, well, I've got a little confession for you too. I'm on my way to a masquerade and my name's Kevin. Hey, it's all right to laugh at that.
That's not even funny at all. I'm shocked at y'all.
Oh, yes.
There's a tear in your eye, and I'm wondering why, for it never should be there at all. With such power in your smile, sure a storm to beguile, so there's never a teardrop should fall. With your sweet lilting laughter like some fairy song, and your eyes twinkle bright as can be, you should laugh all the